face that kind of failure. If everything is going so slow and comfortably for you that you have no what ifs and you have no like, oh, we dipped or failed, whatever you want to call it, then you're probably not a real entrepreneur, you're a wantrepreneur.
Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Entrepreneurship 101. This is our last Entrepreneurship 101 for 2013. Yeah, it's fine. We do go out with style though. This is our Meet the Entrepreneurs event for our ICE practice, Information Technologies, Communications and Entertainment practice. And we've got a really great panel this evening for you. We have Janice Diner, CEO and founding partner of Horizon Studios, Jason Lazarou, founder of MedEngine, and Anisa Mirza, CEO and co-founder of Giveffect. And our moderator for this evening is Aron Solomon, senior advisor at Mars. I'll tell you a bit more about him in a little bit. So stamp cards, we do stop stamping cards at 6:15. For those of you who are veterans to Entrepreneurship 101, you do know that the card stamping is stamping your cards is important because that's how we track attendance. We want to say hi to our partners at NORCAT Innovation Factory and Haltech. Thank you very much for joining us. This evening, our networking categories for Meet the Entrepreneurs are web, digital, mobile, software, and hardware. If you don't fit into any of those categories, it's fine. You probably got a blank name tag. We still encourage you to chat and network and speak to people around you. Shake a hand or two, collect a name, a business card or two, that kind of thing. Beyond that, we do have two announcements. So, as I said, this is our last Entrepreneurship 101 for 2013. We resume next year on January the 8th with our Lived It lecture with Alan Lau, who is the co-founder and CEO of Wattpad, and I believe that's going to be a really, really great lecture. He'll take some time just to tell us about his own experience as an entrepreneur and what that's been like so far. Our Entrepreneurship Toolkit workshops is a really experiential program. Some of you might be familiar with our Toolkit workshops, and it's very hands-on, so it gives you about 2 or 3 hours in a room with about 20 other entrepreneurs and a seasoned entrepreneur as the instructor. And it's very hands-on because you basically work through a lot of your business idea and stuff related to your business in the workshop. So the intensive program, the application deadline is December 13th. That's on Friday, I believe. So there's not much time left, and the spots do fill up quickly. You can check our website if you want the application form for that. Moving on to the panel, the more exciting part. Our moderator, Aron Solomon, is an educator and entrepreneur and has over 25 years of experience in the business of schools and innovation. He's the former CEO of Think Global School and is a mentor and advisor to the Thiel Foundation, which defends and promotes freedom in all its dimensions, political, personal, and economic. Aron is also an entrepreneur in residence at Chicago's IC Stars, which provides a rigorous technology-based workforce development and leadership training program for low-income adults. And of course, he's a senior advisor here at Mars. Join me in welcoming Aron to the podium. He's going to continue and welcome our panelists.
Let's see if the microphone works. The microphone works. That was what a lovely introduction of me. I wasn't aware that the Thiel Foundation promoted freedom in all of its forms. That was fantastic. So I'm going to introduce everybody. And first of all, a couple of things. I really want you to tweet if you use Twitter during this event. This is not going to be a boring event. One thing I can tell you about these Meet the Entrepreneur events around the world is they're all canned. They're all really boring, and I don't want to do one of those. So I think this is going to be a little bit of a different event. There's going to be lots of audience participation throughout. We're not going to talk at you for an hour and a half. The hashtag for this is ENT101. We've got a big screen back there, which has it, so feel free to tweet about any of us if you use Twitter or any kind of social media that you want. I haven't discussed any of the questions that I plan to ask, probably because I haven't really written down any questions, so this may not go well at all with the entrepreneurs. But I'm going to introduce them to you now just a little bit. We'll get them up on stage, and they can tell you a little bit more about yourself. These are three entrepreneurs that I know from fairly well to a little bit. So let's bring up on stage Anisa Mirza, who is the CEO of Giveffect. Come on up. Nice to see you. Janice Diner, who is the CEO and founder of Horizon. Janice has a very cool mobile phone with her, which she can talk about later on because it's part of what she does. And Dr. Jason Lazarou, who is the founder of MedEngine. Thanks. So here we all are. Jason.
Yes, Aaron.
Is it true that you're not a full-time entrepreneur?
That is the case, yes.
So why don't you tell us for a second what else it is that you do?
Well, in my spare time, I'm actually a neurologist at Mount Sinai Hospital. I'm an assistant professor of medicine at the University of Toronto. And I'm the director of the educational program at the U of T for the neurology division. And that's part of my responsibilities. Other times I'm doing some research and traveling around at conferences. I just got back from Krakow, in fact. It was cold, but it was very pretty. Yeah, if you've ever been to Krakow, it's a lovely place. So that's my main day job. And I've decided to pursue entrepreneurship to see if I can broaden my horizons.
And why
learn
don't you tell
something
us,
new.
Awesome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what MedEngine is, and then we'll dive into that more later on.
Yeah, so MedEngine is a collaborative learning platform that helps doctors learn more efficiently. And it has come out, it stemmed from my personal experience as being the education director for the neurology division. You know, neurology is a complicated topic. It has a tremendous amount of information that you have to impart, and in fact, believe it or not, residents have a very short amount of time to learn what we need to teach them in their residency. So things need to be done extremely efficiently. And my personal experience is that it's not done very efficiently. So I looked for ways to use technology as an adjunct to the usual type of education that people get face-to-face at the bedside, which will never go away, and technology is never going to supplant that. You know, I like to say that when TV came out, Broadway didn't stop. People like face-to-face, and education is best that way. But as an adjunct, it can help solve some problems that face-to-face doesn't solve. And so I looked around in what's available right now, and none of the solutions that were available solved my specific problem. And so I essentially penciled something on a piece of paper and said, can I build it? And someone said, sure. And so I looked for funds, and we built the first prototype, which is currently being tested right now at the University of Toronto. And we're early beta. And so we've got lots of feedback that are coming in now. We've got analytics. We've got a little bit of a usability study starting in January to get feedback from the users, and iterative design to try and make it the best product it can be.
Great. We'll dive into those points much more later on. Janice, why don't you tell us a little bit about Horizon?
So we have a platform. It's a sales incentive and training platform, and we help educate retail sales staff on the floor. It's really actually more of increased product sales and increased product recommendations. So typically when you walk into, let's say, a Best Buy and you're looking to buy a product, often the sales dude on the floor may know less than you. Right? So the objective with the platform is to help manufacturers and OEMs get share of voice in the retail store. We are a little bit more advanced. In fact, we are in market. We're in 15 countries, 10 languages, and we have about 50 retail partners. We're a Google supplier, so we run the Motorola business globally. We've launched all the latest Moto X and Moto G phones around the world. And essentially, we're completely platform agnostic, so we train on mobile, we train the trainers, we train the end user. We have a whole incentive and reward system attached to the platform, and obviously we're making great use of analytics where possible. So that's
Great. Anisa, why don't you tell us about Giveffect?
Sure, I'd love to. First of all, so it's working, the mic's working. It's at the back of my head somewhere. They said I wasn't wearing a belt, it was a problem, but you can hear me, so it's all good. So my name's Anisa, and I'm the CEO and co-founder, wow, that tickles, of Giveffect. And basically what we do is two things. So number one, we are the first crowdfunding platform built exclusively for charities and nonprofits. So we service charities across Canada, as well as recently internationally as well. We've expanded. So we are the crowdfunding platform, full operating system for charities, and again, engaging users with a lot of gamification and social impact score. On the other end, what we also do is we serve the corporations. And in that regard, we're a SaaS, a software as a service for corporations who want to manage all their corporate giving, corporate citizenship, and employee giving. And that's more of our, I guess, more recent part of our platform. So we're twofold. We're a crowdfunding, kind of full service operating system for charities, but we also serve the corporations for their SaaS and corporate giving needs. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. We started about a year ago, and we have over 250 registered charities, raised over hundreds of thousands of dollars for wonderful causes, and like I said, recently opened up internationally and started onboarding corporations. We're proud to say recently we onboarded RBC Canada as one of our corporate clients. That's a really big achievement for us recently, and I guess I will chat further with you guys as we progress through the panel. Thank you so much.
Great. So this is my first time ever in one of these seats, meaning the not being interviewed seats. And I was in one of those seats about 2 weeks ago for an event that was, they'll probably bleep it out, I don't know if we can do this, Mars, the No All Bullshit Aside event at a place called Project Rhino. And the guy who was introducing everybody said, I like this, he said, so you were born and now you're here at this event at Project Rhino. So what happened in the middle? And I think there's actually some relevance to that because you all took different paths to becoming entrepreneurs. Sure. So, you know, Jason started to tell his story about the fact that he's a physician. And he came upon this need. And one of the great things I think that entrepreneurs can do is you've got to be really, really great at identifying pain points. So you identified that pain point. But let's talk for a second about life, because the things that you mentioned in your work are absolute commitments on your time and energy. But you've got other things going on. You're recently newlywed. You have a child. Is this true?
Yes, it is true. I have a beautiful 14-month-old. Yeah, and that's an incredibly important part of my life is managing time. And time is probably, if someone had sent me a set of questions that to contemplate answers to before I came, and one of them was, what's the greatest challenge you face? And without a doubt, my greatest challenge is time. I think we all face challenges with time. Mine are particularly acute because I do have a job which probably takes 70 hours a week as is, and so I have to try and squeeze in a lot of other things in the very small amount of time, and my daughter is she just gets priority. So there is a very, very challenging aspect to running a business with small amount of time, but it does certainly allow you to cut through what is absolutely essential. And so I think in some regards it's been a way of laser focusing what I think I need to actually accomplish, and also recognizing that I need to find the right people who can work with me to do some of the things that I can't possibly do with the time I have. So it's a tremendous challenge, an unbelievably tough challenge, and sometimes frustrating because I think it does slow down the process. I know you're young, you have nothing else to do, you just got out of high school, you've learned how to code because you didn't do anything else, and now you're going to start a software tech company. Great. You got all the time in the world to succeed, and you can fail 5 times while doing it. But at this stage, it's a little bit more time pressured, and things need to work in a different way. But I think it's still possible. And I can't claim that MedEngine is a great success yet. We're on a road. The road may end in success, and if it does, and one day I come back and sit in the seat, I can say you can in fact start a successful business while being a neurologist full-time at the University of Toronto. So I think there's a lot of ways in which a business can be started, and there's a lot of successful paths.
So as Jason's speaking, Anisa's getting more animated, which may be the microphone poking her back of the head, or it may be another thing. Would you like to add something about this kind of life balance and how your professional
Jason,
career evolves?
I love you so much. But I gotta say, I don't know about this whole when you graduate. I'm 26, so I think I'm millennial category still. I hope I'll be there a little longer. But I can definitely relate to the idea that if I'm gonna have 2 cats, which I do believe are kind of like children. They take up a lot of your time, and you know what I mean? But I get it, the whole real child thing is different, and it's a lot more work. But having said that, no, I think it's really, really difficult to be an entrepreneur, whether you are outside of Generation X, I'm not even gonna peg an age, or whether you are within that age group, you recently graduated. It is really, really tough to be an entrepreneur. I don't know that there is one ideal age. I do think for ICT companies, I was reading a study recently that said older, at 30 and above, make better entrepreneurs. My co-founders are 35. I'm 26. So I don't know that there's any one right age, but I can hear your sentiments exactly, and please don't kick me off the stage just yet.
Actually, I just want to say I definitely didn't want to give the impression that age has anything to do with success. I think it just means where you are in life tend to be busier if you're older, but no, absolutely not. I have no doubt that with age comes wisdom, and with wisdom comes a greater likelihood of success if you can commit the time. So I do believe those stats which show that if people commit, they're older, they can actually succeed greater. I mean, there is some, obviously there's benefits to having lived a life and learning some skills. So no, there's no doubt that any age can be a successful entrepreneur. I believe that.
Here's some very good news, actually, as I survey the crowd and the approximate ages in the room. In 2011, Vivek Wadhwa, who has appointments at like 5 universities, I think his primary appointment now is Singularity, actually did a study looking at the correlation between age and entrepreneurial success. He found the most successful entrepreneurs, I think his exact number was like 40.6. So while it's great to have lots of young entrepreneurs out there, and we commend everybody in the room who's a young entrepreneur, the good news is you can get a little bit older and be successful as well. Janice,
yes.
I'm not looking at you because you are, first of all, you're not the oldest on the panel, it's me. So there's number one.
Sure?
I'm pretty sure. But, so, you know, you've got a lot.
We've had this discussion.
We've had this discussion upstairs.
I think we're the
You
same
have
age.
a lot of commitments in your life. And upstairs, as for those who know, in the Mars Commons, we have an accelerator, and it's called Jolt. And Jolt's saying is, of course, I'm going to space on their saying right now, but it's really through constraints that we're able to make the right choices, that we're able to have success. So on the theme of time, how do you feel constrained, and how do you feel that those constraints have contributed to the success of Horizon?
Constraints. So there's never enough time. There's just simply, startups have no boundaries, and there is never enough time. I honestly don't know how you're doing it. I can't conceive of less than 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on my startup. I can't imagine in any way, shape, or form how you're doing it. That would be number one. But on the age thing, I actually think age is a state of mind, and I actually feel the reverse. I feel sometimes that it's being an older entrepreneur, it's been an interesting journey I obviously saw sort of a bit of an age prejudice, but the reverse of what you're talking about, or maybe I perceive it. You know, it's hard to sometimes tell, but for me, it's state of mind. So I had a good career as an employee, so to speak. I grew up in the ad business as a creative director, and I ran large creative departments, and successfully. I did nice. I had a nice career, and you know, in the ad business, you have an expiry date to a certain degree. I missed all the dates, luckily, but I was part of a team at an agency that got the advertising rights to Facebook in early 2006, and I ran a large creative department, and I had a fair bit of cash and a fair bit of large clients. So I got to experiment with technology in a way that was a gift and an opportunity. And you know, it was like a 70 or 80 person agency, and not everyone, there was 3 of us that were really into it. That's about it. But I fell in love with building technology, and in theory, sort of reinvented what I do today. But in reality, I produce things. I was a producer then, and I'm a producer now. I just produce with different tools, and I build technology. I'm still, for the most part, with the same, you know, speaking to CMOs and CEOs. I'm still speaking to the same type of people I was speaking to before. I just have a different bag of tricks that I'm selling them. And artists, developers, they're both a little crazy. It's one wears shoes, one doesn't. You know, they're kind of similar. Similar to manage.
Janice, did you just quote Jay-Z? Artist developers? I almost thought she was, nobody else listens to him here, right? Anyway.
No, but you know what I mean? I managed a creative department for years. It's not much different than managing a room full of developers, roughly. It's the same thing. I still make things move across the screen. I just make things move across the screen with different technology, to me. I mean, that's sort of how I still use my marketing skills. I grew up as a marketer. I still use the same things as I did before. I'm just using them from a different angle. is really all the difference, I think. And then I'm lucky enough to be doing it well, I guess, and building a business. That's the sum of it.
Let me ask you a quick question. Would you rather be doing anything else? Would you rather be working for a shop, for anybody, or you want to be doing this?
Who would hire me?
You think you're unemployable?
I've been unemployable most of my career.
Listen, I feel the same way. There's no way that I'm employable. I actually work here at Mars, which is a very poor reflection on Mars, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs are actually unemployable.
We had this discussion
in a very
the back
positive
room.
way.
So I'm building software so I can build it the way I want to build it, and so that I can have the people I want in the room with me building it. So I have my own sandbox with the people I want to play with every day. Would be, obviously I want to make money and all those other things that, you tell your VC, but really, I like building things.
But so
and
you're
I
on
like
something.
people using it, right? So I've been very fortunate. I've never been in beta. Everything I build before it's dry, before the paint's dry, is in the hands of someone around the world on a phone, always. So I'm in like permanent live beta.
Wow.
I've been lucky, so I'm always in client. I'm always in market. So we could, I can hear something in a country in here that they want to try something, and I'm like, oh, good, I'd like to try that. And then if it works, I get to pass it through the platform. If it doesn't work, we just bury it. So.
And Jason, you're trying to build your own sandbox, but you're trying to build your own sandbox in an extremely regulated park owned by people who don't usually let sandboxes be built.
Yeah, I think dealing with doctors is tough, for sure. That gives me the advantage of being on the inside. That probably is the number one thing I've got going for me, if I've got anything going for me. And understanding the needs, the very specific needs of the types of learners that I'm dealing with, I think, again, is an advantage. Not understanding, from my personal background, technology was probably the greatest disadvantage. I certainly would consider myself a techie. I like technology. I've used it. I tend to buy the gadgets that come out really soon. I like apps, but to go ahead and say, okay, now I'm going to build one, suddenly opened up a Pandora's box. And so the process of going ahead and actually building a piece of technology, I really appreciate the fact that you build it and it works immediately. That's very impressive. But I think there is a wide range and skill set in building this kind of technology, and everything. I'm an educator. My primary mode of operation throughout my day, this morning I was in front of 500 people at the university giving a talk on vertigo. My primary mode of operation is to teach, and I know everyone can learn. If you work hard at it, there are resources like Mars that will teach you all you need to know to be an entrepreneur. There are resources that will teach you how to actually develop software. And I did a lot of reading. Actually called on a few friends, a couple of who have been doing project management for large corporations, and asked them to tutor me on doing project development in software development. And I learned Agile, my first technical word in software development, and ran my development team myself. And we did heartbeat sessions every week for 2 years. On Skype, on Google, or live and in person, quick iterations, looking at this code. I don't still understand code, but I understand what I want to see them build. And ultimately, you do develop through the process of just getting yourself in it, all the skills you need to do it. And I think that's one of the things that I find most important is just doing it every day. Getting out and actually throwing this pasta on the wall and seeing how it, and I agree, there was a lot of mistakes along my road. I would never deny that, and I think that's part of the process of learning. I think it's very good to minimize that, and taking these kinds of courses and getting yourself educated is the most important way to do that. But I think getting out and doing it was just fun for me, number one. And I think when I heard you say I wanted to build my old sandbox and have the people I like around me, that's exactly, I think, how every entrepreneur feels. You want your thing that you can put your foosball table, and you don't have to wear socks. You can bring your dog, and you're going to live it the way you want to do it. Because when you come out of medicine, the institutions that we work in are not like that. It's a little bit less fun. So there is an excitement about being an entrepreneur that drives you towards doing it. I got to say, it is the thing I look forward to the most in my day. It is. After all the things that I've been doing, I do look forward to the MedEngine time I can spend on it every day.
Anisa, your sandbox is a little bit different because you're building a sandbox that in some ways is very similar to sandbox that already exists. It's a crowdfunding platform. But from where I sit, what I know about your business is that what you guys have done very well, your co-founders are wonderful, by the way. They're tweeting about you. It's up on the big board in real time. So giving you lots of Twitter love. But one thing that you guys have done very, very well is you have a wonderful ability as a company, and I think you personally, to influence influencers. So how do you do that?
How do I do that? Oh my God, I'd have to kill you if I told you. No, I'm joking. One of the things that, yeah, you're absolutely correct, is that, you know, Aaron, when we started our company, it wasn't that we were inventing something that does not exist. Instead, and in fact, what we were doing is we were saying, hey, listen, so I guess just a step back, my background for the first, I am 26, I wasn't lying, but the first 4 years of my career, I started working in the space when I was in third year university, was working with large, medium, and in some cases small size charities and nonprofits. So my background was in the space. I've been on funding boards, I've been a project manager, I've been a fundraising director, and working with people always, you know, at the boards that were twice my age, and sitting in around the room and looking at the solutions that we had, I was saying something's wrong here, and we're not engaging our donors, right? And we're losing out on fundraising potential. And of course, I was told, listen, sit back and learn and soak up the wisdom. And it was great. They had a lot of wisdom to soak up, but then I was done soaking up, and I said, no, there's still something wrong, and we can do something better. So I moved on, and my then next boss, actually a startup CEO, saw me speaking at an event and said, hey, listen, I think there's some transferable skills here. I think you should come work for me in sales. Now, my entire background, as much of an influencer I may be, was all in fundraising, nonprofit, charity space. I said, oh, I don't know anything about sales. He said, come on over. There's a lot of transferable skills. Let's see how it goes. And it was great, and I loved it. I loved it, and it's, I guess, a side point. One of the pieces of advice I'd give to any entrepreneur is, before you start your own company, if you have the opportunity, if you can, work for another startup. I worked for a startup, spent close to a year there, and realized my passion, my vision for what I wanted to do was even more solidified. I knew what space I wanted to innovate. It was, again, my home base, the charity space. So I said to myself, what already works in this space, and why were our solutions not working? It was around 2012, and you know, my company's a year old, so just before that, my co-founders and I met, and we looked around and we said, what are solutions that work? And we were really fascinated with crowdfunding as a concept. I mean, $1.2 billion raised in 2011, and that was just primarily in the US alone. That's the revenue that crowdfunding pulled in. In 2013, at the beginning of 2013, those numbers had jumped to, guess what? $5.8 billion. Crazy numbers. And I said, well, how much of that is social categories? How much of that is the market I'm trying to attract? The highest category was the market that I was trying to go into. 30% of the total revenue of crowdfunding dollars came from the social causes category. And I said, well, wow, this is amazing, first of all. Great market opportunity. Love the numbers. But why is it that this $164 billion industry or charitable space, whatever you want to call it, why were they not jumping on board the crowdfunding bandwagon? Like who's Giveffect, right? Like there's Indiegogo, there's Fundraiser, there's many platforms out there today. But all of them had a problem whereby my clients could not securely and in a transparent way use the platform. There's a tax receipting problem, there was a security problem. So we did not reinvent the wheel. In fact, we took that wheel and we changed it around a bit and made it work for our clients. And that's exactly where our patents come in. So absolutely, we came into a space that was already there, made it work exactly for my clients having that background. But then you're right, we went into a space, you're talking about your space and how medical professionals aren't always, the easiest to influence. Well, try speaking to maybe board members of some charities that are very, very senior and have done things a certain way, and you are wrong before you even say anything. So when we started off, and I started meeting with clients, it started off being, what is crowdfunding? And of course I was like, what? No, I'm going to tell you why my crowdfunding platform is better. What do you mean, what is crowdfunding? And so the problem I had is, how do I pitch my product if they don't even know what my innovation is based off of, right? Like, it was really difficult. So then this idea of being an influencer was really important. This idea of being somebody who understood the space, who was a spokesperson for next-gen donors, who was a spokesperson for engaging fundraisers was really critical for me and my brand. And that's exactly what I tried to do. So it takes a lot of confidence and thick skin, I suppose, is what I'd say.
So the big clock that's in front of me in red, we actually have a clock up here that y'all can't see, says we've used like over 20 minutes so far. I want to give the audience an opportunity to ask a couple of questions, and then we're going to talk about the big F word. That's failure. I had got you there for a second. And keep tweeting. There's someone called Tipsy Teacher who's tweeting, and her tweets keep coming up, and they're very interesting, so you should look at those if you're on Twitter in real time. But we've got microphones in the audience, so let's get a question from the audience and see what people think. We do have microphones in the audience. Is this correct?
Yes.
Wonderful. Anybody?
There you go.
Oh, we got our first one.
Good. For those who are not watching live and who might see this online, it's a full house. This is great. Thanks for coming out.
Woo.
We don't have someone, he walked by the microphone, which is... Okay, we're going to get into our topic about the F word. So I would commend to all of you a video on YouTube by Dave McClure, the guy who runs 500 Startups. And it's about, it's a video that he did, a piece that he did in Osaka, Japan. So if you type in Dave McClure Osaka, you'll see it. Because this, I think, is one of the best entrepreneurial talks about failure. So I want to talk about the big F word. I want to know a couple things. I want to know what you think about failure.
It's not an option.
It's not an option. Tell me why failure is not an option.
It's not an option.
Tell me why it's not an option.
It's just not an option.
What if we're failing at this right now? Why is it not an option? Failure is not an option for your company. It's not an option for you as an entrepreneur, or we can't accept failure for other reasons.
All of it.
Okay?
Maybe it's an age thing, but you know, when you start hearing about this 1 in 10 succeed, I want to be 1 in 1. I get confused with the 9. I mean, as a professional, when I was a creative director, if I succeeded 1 in 10, I'd be dead. So what is this 1 in 10 thing that people talk about? I'm done. I'm not interested. I'm interested in 1 of 1. So failure's not an option. That's simple.
But the meme that's out there that everybody is teaching people in the room like this is that we should be embracing failure.
I
Failure is good, and we should fail fast, and everything should be lean, which I personally think is ridiculous. But we should do all these things. And you're saying we shouldn't fail. Anisa, you seem like you have an answer to this.
I don't have an. I just, you know what? I'm half Italian, half Pakistani. This is our face naturally all the time when people talk. But about that, so I do, Janice. I agree with you to an extent, and Aron as well. They call me the shit disturber on the panel.
No, but maybe
here's
it's not failure. Like, it's like the path is not linear. You know that drawing, you know, where the path is like, just because I'm going like that doesn't mean I'm, just because I go dip before I go back up or any of that, which is natural. I do go into the dip 10 times a day some days, you know, because we're running fast and we make mistakes, but failure is not an option. So there's a difference.
And I think I get it. So I actually, now that you've rephrased that, I do agree with you. And I think that, I don't know if Jason, you relate to what I'm about to say, but so on failure, you know, I'm a really proud person, and I can, you know, kind of echo Janice's sentiments that if anyone who's interacted with me or spoken with me, sometimes I have to like tone it down a little bit. But the idea is that, you know, when my team and I started, by the way, the co-founders that they're speaking of are twins. They're in the second row to my right. You know, when we started this company, again, I told you when we started, it was like in the ICT space, you were kind of the losers in the IT space. What do you mean you're serving the charity market and corporate giving? Like, it was really weird for a majority of the mainstream ICT companies. We were kind of the weirdo in the room always. And I looked at my co-founders and I said, do you believe in this? Like, do you believe we're going to make it to the end? And I'm going to be like, because you said we're going to make this fun via email and we're going to be honest, I'm going to be perfectly honest. The answer wasn't, I didn't hear the answer that I wanted to hear, which was absolutely 100%. In fact, sometimes initially within my team, I felt that, and maybe it's an age thing, like maybe it is, I don't know. You know, it was more like, well, we're trying out this new thing and we hope it'll work. But you know, we don't. But we want to be Canadian at the same time and be polite about it and not be as though we know where it's going to go. And to me, that's total crazy. That's
not an age
censoring
thing.
my words. Thank you very, Janice. Thank you very much for saying that. But that's how I felt. So for me, it wasn't a matter of what if. If I show one bit to you as I'm trying to sell my tool to you and take your dollars in return, that there's an ounce of doubt, or if I'm going to you as a supporter and showing that there's an ounce of doubt that this may or may not work, I'm not going to make it. And so my team and I really had to sit back and say to ourselves, how much do we believe? How infectious is this passion? And whether or not those stats are true, which in many cases I'm sure they are, we're going to make it. Failure is not an option to that extent. Now, does that mean you cannot fail and you don't have the word, that pivot word that we all, and you probably learned? That's critical. And I say embrace it. So if you fail, and I guess maybe Janice doesn't like the word failure when it comes to those small bumps in the road. If you have those bumps in the road, don't cover it up. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. Of course you're going to face that kind of failure. Janice says she has those dips, she calls them. We all have them. And if you don't have them, you're not an entrepreneur, right? If everything is going so slow and comfortably for you that you have no what ifs and you have no like, oh, we dipped or failed, whatever you want to call it, then you're probably not a real entrepreneur, you're a wantrepreneur. So you better know that you're going to face that. And you better have thick skin, I really mean it, where you can sit back and tell yourself, especially if you're the CEO of the company, sometimes you're the chief psychologist, and you really have to sit back, even when you have your doubt, look at your team and say, we're going to make this. We're going to make it to the end, right? We're going to be successful. We're going to be the #1 company that's going to do this. It's so important to believe in that. I'm going to end with saying, when I give a talk about failure, and I actually love seminars that talk about it, one of the things that I say is, we talk a lot of these conferences that we go to, we pay a lot of money to go and attend, are about talking about the sentences, right? The punctuation, sorry. So we have a full stop, or you guys here say period. We have exclamation mark, question mark. Those are the punctuations. That's what success is. But all those words that make up the sentence, that essay, that comprise majority of words, that's your failure. Embrace it, talk about it. That's how we learn and that's how we improve. So don't just focus on your punctuation. Acknowledge the words within it.
That was really motivational, Jason. What you did, the last like 9 minutes of your
Whoa.
talk were great. So listen, as a doctor, you clearly.
I gotta respond. First of all, it's confidence emanating from the two, which is really what it's all about. Feeling like you're going to succeed and believing it wholeheartedly. Obviously, people fail, despite their best efforts.
No, they don't.
In the greatest possible circumstances. Sebastian Thurn, he's the guy who started
Udacity.
the Google Glass. He's a Google X project. He runs it. He's a brilliant, soon-to-be Nobel Prize-winning scientist, and he started Udacity. It just failed. Okay, so this is a massive online course system which has just failed. He's probably the brightest guy in the world today. So it does happen even to the best of us. And I think, in medicine, you're going to fail to do everything you want to do properly because it's so much information. No matter how smart you are and how hard you work, you're going to at times fail. And everyone suffers that experience. And I think the most important aspect of failure is, without a doubt, and it has to be learning from it, persevering, overcoming it, not letting it drag you down or making you feel like you will never succeed again. Because then you will then not have had the great opportunity of failing and allowing you to lift you up. So for sure failure will happen. I'm sorry. It does to most of us, unless you're extraordinarily blessed and gifted. So it is, I think, most important, though, in the context of what we're doing. They are difficult things. And what can you do to minimize the chance of failure is really what you're here about again today. You're trying to find out all of the elements that you can line up to minimize the probability of failure. Because you don't want to fail. You want to spend your time being successful. You want to spend your time at the beach after you've sold your company for $45 million to Google, drinking a margarita, not doing your 15th startup when you're 65. For sure. I understand that for sure. But it is probabilities. If you learn what you need to know, if you have the commitment, if you're incredibly hardworking, if you know your field really well, you will increase the chance of success. But again, failure, if it happens, learn from it. Persevere, rise above it, keep working hard. Don't let it bring you down.
We have people lined up at the microphone in the back for questions. Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay.
You're on.
We actually had a question come through the Twitter stream from our friends at Innovation Factory in Hamilton, and I think I can relate it to the topic we're discussing now. So the question was around the panel's thoughts on going to the Valley or somewhere south of the border in the States where there's a bigger market and more of a culture of innovation or startups, for example, and does that lead to success? We often hear that potentially startups in Canada are having a harder time and potentially failing because we don't have a culture of risk capital or of startup culture and the same ecosystems that are in San Francisco, for example. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Janice, didn't your company just return from Silicon Valley? You were actually...
My name was on this question.
You were actually very, very lucky. For those who don't know, Janice's company was part of the C100 in Silicon Valley last week, which is a huge honor for a Canadian company to be a part of. And Janice and I, back in the green room, which is really green, were discussing her experience at the C100. So why don't you jump in first with that?
Okay, so I'm still glittery. Yeah, really, it's depressing. So we spent a week, it's with C100. It's a very sort of slice and an honor to sort of be part of it. But the best way to describe it was Kool-Aid for entrepreneurs, is probably the best way to describe it, is because it brings some of the smartest people to the room that you get exposed to. So you get exposed to an unbelievable amount of talent and knowledge in a very short period of time. And it's so intense that you actually don't check your email, you don't check on your business. Like I've never not, like, no, really. But, you know, I've never lived in the Valley or spent more than, you know, I've gone back and forth, but I've never actually spent a serious amount of time. So you do sort of get a feeling, like I definitely felt so much more that anything's possible. You know, it definitely felt the sense of recognition of things we've done as a company that I don't feel are recognized here. I definitely feel a risk aversion amongst the finance community that you don't inherently feel there. But you also, you know, there was a lot of conversation about how to hire for growth, how to manage, you know, best of breed. And sometimes it felt like, you know, there was a culture there that bred those individuals, and it was harder. Like when I come back and I think about how do I implement that, it's more like how do I find a network to implement that? How do I find what I need to run? Because our business is not Canadian. My clients are global. My business is global. I happen to live in Canada. It's always been that way for us. And I'm on the phone, like this morning, I'm on the phone with the UK, I'm on the phone with Brazil in the afternoon. I never feel location as an issue in my day-to-day, yet I find it when I go into meetings in Canada, yet I don't, but when I'm in the US, I don't feel it. So it's sort of, are we creating that environment, or is, you know, it's kind of a funny sort of thing. It just, being there, I felt for that period I had no boundaries. And I think that and the idea, there was like this, what was it, three asses rule. Build a kick-ass product in a kick-ass environment, a kick-ass product with kick-ass people in a kick-ass market.
Love it.
Isn't that amazing? That pretty much sums it up, that's what you need to do. And environment, age, all those things are just baggage. Dump it and run.
If you remember nothing else tonight, you now have the 3 asses rule.
That's right.
That's what we'll have to remember because we're going down to the Valley in the new year, so we will keep
No,
that in mind.
you're gonna love it.
Jason, it looked like you wanted to jump in on the,
You know,
on the Valley
just
thing.
as a corollary, and I think the point is that it's the people and the talent
Yes.
in the environment, in that density, which makes a place succeed. And if you want to take a corollary for what Toronto is well recognized as being one of the greatest locations in the world for, it's medical science. So the University of Toronto is one of the top medical research institutions in the world, and top 5, better than most of the Ivy League schools. And it's because they've done something which is the sort of foundation of success. They've recruited all the greatest minds in science, brought them into one institution so that their doors are across from each other so they can walk down the hallway and have ideas and, you know, exchange their great experience and their great thoughts in a very close-knit network of people. And I imagine from what you were saying, it
That's what
sounds
it felt
very
like.
much
That's
like
what it
that.
felt
And
like.
so rather than it being just that someone here is trying to stop entrepreneurship from happening, it may just not be that we have the density, the core density of what you find in San Francisco, but it's still not, not bad.
No, I think
it's not as great as there.
It just seemed more present, and I
Yeah.
think that's what you're describing, right?
Yeah.
It was more present. Everyone was on the same page, on the same path, with the same, the same sort of, let's
and then
build it.
And then it's self-perpetuating because you start having success, the money flows in, and that in this regard for research funds come into the institution, and then other scientists want to come there because that's
right.
where they get funds from. And so it actually is this great self-perpetuating machine that grows and grows and grows.
It's community.
Yeah.
I mean, it's community.
It's a
That's
community.
key. That's why we
Yeah.
are moving down in the new year. It's interesting you mentioned the Valley. So my company and I, we're going to move down, and similar to you, Janice, our
Physically
company
move down?
is physically in Canada, and we're located here. Our headquarters are here. I'm proud to be a Canadian-born company and hope to stay one, but we are an international company. We serve clients across the globe as well. And so as much as that's critical, one of the things that we are doing is we're moving our company down to the Valley for about 6 months and then going to be returning. You do have better tax credits here. You do have great opportunities from the government that is supporting you financially, and that's great, and we're starting to kind of shake things up here, and Toronto is an awesome city. I'm proud to be from here. But one of the things that's so critical when you're in a startup space is community. You can't be what you can't see, and when you have especially as an ICT company, being in the hub of so many successful people or so many people that are really at it without those risk kind of aversions that you experience here, it's just so amazing to soak that all up. I think that anyone who can afford it and is able to do so should take the opportunity to at least go down. Why would we come back here? Because A, we're proud to be Canadian, but B, because it's cheaper to scale here. It's cheaper to hire engineers here. You have better tax credits here. So I'm not going to neglect that, but I'm also not going to come up here and give you one of those conversations that says, oh, Canada, stay here, no need. Like, I'm going to be real. It does really help if you can go down there, and one of the reasons why we're going down. So.
We've got another audience question.
Hey guys, thanks for coming down and giving all this great advice. I just want to ask a question that I think has affected all three of you guys. Basically, how do you effectively sell to people who are technology illiterate when you're selling a software solution? Like, for example, Jason, you were selling your technology solution to doctors who usually try not to get advances in the field of like software to teach them. And Janice, I'm sure you face that with
Every day.
trying to sell your mobile technologies to many different companies. And Anisa, you told the story about how you were trying to sell it to charities and they didn't even know what crowdfunding was. To give you a little background, I'm trying to develop a SaaS product for chiropractors and high-end medical people to basically capture leads. But a lot of them barely have a functioning website. So what kind of advice do you have for this sort of problem?
Well, someone told me, I love entrepreneurs and their idioms. There's so many idioms. This is my favorite so far. This great friend of mine, successful entrepreneur, said, you got to think about your software. Is it a vitamin or is it a painkiller? Listen, everyone could do well with vitamins, but maybe 1% of people will take them. But anyone who needs a painkiller will take it. So when you're designing your software, you got to find the pain that they're experiencing. Don't think to yourself, I would find this useful. I would use it if I had it. That's not enough. It needs to truly be deeply considered. Where is the most painful thing that I can solve with this solution? You'll increase your usage immensely if you find a good painkiller. So beyond that, obviously, I will leave it in their hands to talk more about marketing, but from the perspective of what you build, that's the greatest advice I've ever heard from somebody. Painkiller.
I like that.
I think that's absolutely amazing. It's funny you mentioned that because I was recently meeting with, a friend, sort of mentor, Michael Hyatt from Blue Cat Networks, very successful entrepreneur who was at Six event, just honored Silver Management of the Year company. So anyway, Michael and I were sitting and I was talking about the company, and though he had compliments to say, and I do think I can sell my product fairly well, I've been primarily selling it. One of the things he said to me, he literally grabbed me from my arms and he goes, Anisa, just fall in love with the problem as much as you love the solution. Like, you give me all these really sophisticated, why SaaS? and this jargon and just fall in love with the problem as much as you love the solution, and your explanation will be so much simpler. And you talk about pain, and I love that you said that, because he also, not having maybe he does have a biology background, but my background is also neuropsychology in undergrad. And one of the things he said to me is, Anisa, they did MRI scans on customers, and for those of us trying to sell to customers, they said, you know, when you actually can word your problem as though you're taking away pain, they did scans on the brains of these customers, and they said when you word it like that, it's actually as though the same effect of giving Advil to relieve pain from these people's brains. So when you say, I'm solving the pain, I'm taking away this problem, if you can phrase your problem like that, you are literally doing the same effect as Advil would have on pain. That was fascinating to me. And what it did for me is it didn't change what I was selling, it changed the way I was selling. And all of a sudden, SaaS is not something I would say to my clients, because they would say, so your tool is called SaaS? And I'd be like, no, it's not. Oh, crowd fundraising, Giveffect, what's that? And I'm like, oh my God, right? So I look at them and I say, what's your pain point? And then my answer is completely revolved around that in language they're comfortable with. That's your job, is selling it. Fall in love with the problem and don't be embarrassed to.
Janice, I would think that salespeople at big box stores really couldn't care less about your product, even though it can help them. How do you get them to fall in love with it?
Are you kidding? Retail, everything about retail is on fire right now, right? So, you know, which part of retail are people not concerned about?
Exactly.
You should be solving a hair on fire problem. Some would call it product market fit. In that little red bullseye, you sort of, you know, the product. My product. The first iteration of the platform was actually as a Facebook app. That's a perfect example. You know, given my background, it was no surprise that I was obviously building Facebook apps, and we did really well. And then during the IPO period of Facebook, businesses started, every time I started seeing clients, they started going, I don't know if I want to put my sales guys in Facebook. And I started hearing this over and over again. And, you know, so instead of stopping there, right, because it was clearly, in talking to people, there was a barrier between being purchased. Even though it was working, there was a perceived barrier in the room when I was selling. So we obviously went mobile. And the second we went mobile, and the second we went platform agnostic, to be honest, and the market, so we were here, and then the market, with what's happening in retail, and the fear that retailers have, and the you know, when I sit in the CMO office or the CEO office, everyone is terrified about what the consumer is going to do when they get into store with their phones when they're shopping, right? So it is an identifiable pain point that a lot of people are going to spend a lot of money right now trying to fix. So it's product market fit, right? And sometimes it's just timing, and sometimes it's just a bit of luck. You know, we're at the right place. You're at the right place at the right time with the right product and the right market. If you had done it 3 years ago, no one would have paid attention to you. If you done it 3 years later, there's a lot of moving parts that as an entrepreneur you have to actually start listening to. You have to sort of feel the rhythm and the pattern of, or you know, I like to think of it as the user experience of your buyer is as important as the user experience of what you build, right? So we know where our revenue comes from, in what department, and how they use it and how they spend it. It's the same user experience that I define when I have a user actually physically using my software. I think it's sort of, as a marketer, you want to understand all ends of that, and then you want to be agile enough that you develop with your market and with your buyer.
And doesn't that agility, this ties in beautifully, I think, with the last question and the responses, because doesn't this agility come from knowing things outside of ourselves? So everybody was fired up. You're going to the Valley. You just got back from the Valley. And personally, I think Toronto is an amazing startup city. I think it's one of the best in the world. Yeah. But no matter where we are, I think we can gain a lot from going outside of ourselves and that which is familiar with us and learning other things. Don't you agree that that all ties in together?
Most definitely. You don't, in fact, we've been, like, we've been in heavy production. I've been in underground. I think I became like a digital hermit. You couldn't find me anywhere. I had to lift I had something very large to lift, and it required every skill I had and my team plus to get it off the ground. And when we knew we had to sort of stick our head up and start banging the drum. And when we thought about what we needed to do in the fall, we picked the C100 to apply to. There's a few things you could do to start making some noise. It was a reminder for sure, like I need to do these things once a quarter where I'm somewhere else and I hear other people tell me stuff that's important. Because it's so easy to smell your own stuff every day and not really pay attention to what the world is moving so fast. Technology is moving so fast. What I think is great today, I see all these companies who are like a little ahead of me, and then they start to slip. How do you stay innovative? How do you stay at the head of because it's kind of the thing that keeps me up now, is like so it's kind of good, so how do I stay sort of good, and how do I get better good? It's constant obsession with making sure that you're pushing harder, running faster, constantly. It's like, it's a disease.
We've got more questions. We've got more people lined up.
Guys.
So let's just keep taking audience questions. These are great.
Am I next?
You bet.
Okay, cool. Thank you. You're talking about whether or not to go to the Valley. I remember asking a question along this line last year, and when I put it to someone on one of the panels, I said, well, why wouldn't you go to Europe and I named other blocks or other countries, and they said, well, but it's so hard to leave North America, and it's much easier. And I said, are you serious? There's the EU, how many member countries? There are different blocks where you can deal with individual countries, but why would you stay here? For example, my husband and I are going to be doing everything that we do out of Mars, but for the heck of it, we also joined Munk Center and PI Perimeter Institute, and we go all over the place. You don't go to one source when you're doing an essay or project. You look up a pile of different places. So why wouldn't you do that when you're doing your business? Why wouldn't you go to different, dealing with different countries? I've been told, well, it's too difficult a jurisprudence network to get involved in. It's much easier if you stay in North America. I wonder if some of that thinking is coming from people here. I don't know if it's out of fear or what, but of course, be outward looking. For God's sake, we're too tiny a market to stay inward looking, and there's so much out there. Not to say you shouldn't live here. The guy from Clarity, I can't remember his name, he
Dan
said
Martell.
that he said he's based here out east, and he'll go down to the valley and other places, but he's still based here, but he does get around and make the rounds to get more information, to learn more, to be surrounded by people who are good at what they're doing so he can learn more.
So why the valley versus...
It doesn't have to be the valley, but it could be anywhere, but at least get out and look
So
out.
what I would say to that is so absolutely, I think that going out there is great, and I love that you have the resources to be in Europe, and I think that's awesome if you have the resources. The way I look at it is this way. When you're a startup, capital is king, okay? In anything, I think it is, in the most part, but I'm a startup, and I will go where my market is, wherever my market headquarters, where the money is. So if I'm an ICT company, I think that rightfully so, if someone came to me and I was mentoring them and said, I'm going to go to Europe because I'm an ICT company, maybe many people disagree with me, I am half European, but no, you go to the Valley, or you'd stay in Toronto, if anything, because you're an ICT company. Go where your hub is. If I was doing something in fashion, I would go to New York, right? I'd go to Milan. If I was doing something in production, warehouse production, I would go to my other half of my heritage, maybe South Asia or Central Asia. That's where I'd go. So I'd go where my hub is. And so I think that when you're starting off right away, you do need to build that community.
Of course.
I personally just think that being everywhere all at once makes it very difficult to really soak up even all the networks that you're establishing and developing.
I don't mean go everywhere at once, but I mean look outward. You don't just need to do business here.
Absolutely, and I think that Spain is a great example of that. I mean, we've met many amazing VCs that have even come to Mars from there and are bringing and investing in companies here, right? Wherever the talent is, money will follow as well. So I agree with that. But I think that, I guess, just to answer your point, I completely agree. If you can broaden your horizons, you should. You should look at trends and upcoming, market opportunities. That's really important. But at the same time, when you're establishing your base, you go where your hub is, where your community is, and where is your capital, where is your market, where are your clients, and you go there. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll take another question.
Hey, don't forget us.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize there was a microphone over there. We're going to go over here. We don't mean to forget you.
Hey.
Hello.
So my question to all of you is, I'm a recent grad, and I have a few ideas I want to try out. But right now, my financial situation isn't the best. I got like school loans to pay off. I got bills to pay and stuff like that. What advice do you guys have for someone in my situation?
Build something cheap. And that's actually not only supposed to be funny.
No, I love it.
But honestly, the number of possible successful ideas out there are infinite. The options for creating a successful startup, I think, are truly infinite. And you have to take account of your resources, both talent and money, and then based on those restrictions, I think you need to settle on something that is realistically possible. You know, I don't think you can use the, you can have a great idea that is beyond the scope of what resources you have available, and that may be a waste of time. You know, everyone reads Steve Jobs' autobiography or biography and wants to start Apple, but it's maybe the next project you do. It's best, I think, to start with the greatest chance of success by using the resources you do have available. So it really start with a large number of brainstormed ideas that are the things that you would love to put your time and effort and passion into, and then see which of those fit your current circumstances the best. Then you come and find people like Aron, and you say, Aron, how do I get some money for this great idea? After you've put it into a very tight, crystalline form where people understand your vision fully and completely, which means, of course, you understand it fully and completely. And that process doesn't cost any money. It just takes your time. And you have now lots of it.
Yeah, my question is for Anisa, actually, with regards to your comment about moving to the US. What are the rules? Like, do you have to get a visa, or you just move down there? What are the rules on that, just briefly?
Okay, so obviously I'm no expert, but I can tell you what we're doing. There are rules. You do need a work visa for, depending on the duration. We're going for 6 months. We're going to be selling there. We do need a work visa. We are in the process of that. My company that I worked for before, because I told you I worked for a startup, my sales territory was the US. I was in Toronto 1 week, and in the US, different territories every other week. So I was, for the most part, working in the US. I never had a work visa, and once customs stopped me, so I'm not embracing that you should do that, but I'm just saying that was a really big startup company, and that's what he did. He would send me down there all the time, and I'd come back safe and sound. We are going to go through the proper legal procedure. You do need a work visa, long story short. There are government resources that are out there that can help you with that. Not necessarily with the cost, but just with getting a work visa, that yes, you will come back, you are part of a startup community. There are resources, and I can speak to you afterwards, or one of the people here at Mars can as well.
And I can certainly add that as a lawyer by trade, I've heard so many horror stories of my friends all over the world doing things like, I'm just going to go, hang out in the valley for a couple weeks or a month or 2 months and just kind of stay. Now listen, there's a big difference, right? Because as Canadians, we're allowed to go to the United States for months at a time. You're not allowed to go to the United States to work on a startup, folks. You're allowed to go to the United States to go to the beach or visit friends. So if you're going down to work on a startup and you're like, I'm here for a friend's birthday party and I'm going to stay for 4 months, you can't do it. So what I'm telling everybody in the audience to do is if you're going to Silicon Valley or London or Tel Aviv or any of the startup hubs in the world, do it legally, do it properly. Another question?
Right. Yeah, so my question is about sales cycles. So my startup, who's also part of Mars, we have an enterprise social media engagement platform. It's great. We just launched last month. We've got a whole bunch of interested companies. But the level that the interest is at is usually at the manager or director level. The problem is that the person that's going to sign the check, that has to sign off on it, is usually a couple levels above. And so there's a whole bunch of excitement. We go in for 2-3 meetings. But then, of course, then you have a little bit of radio silence. We're in this stage right now where some of them are just starting to get back because they've been able to bring it up to the next level for approval. Have you guys gone through that at all? Are there any tips? I don't know if it's false demand or a sense of urgency, but are there any tips that you can offer to help shorten that, I guess, bureaucratic gap?
And before they answer, don't be modest. Give a shout out to your own startup. He has a very, very cool startup. You're going to hear about it if you haven't heard about it yet. It is?
It's Post Beyond. So postbeyond.com. Pretty much our platform enables companies to provide approved social media content to its employees, people, supporters, and they can share it just with a click of a button. And we've got some crazy analytics, so yeah, check it out.
Nice.
Anybody want his question?
You know, if I understood that question, if I knew how to answer that question, I'd move faster too. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that every business has a rhythm.
Yeah.
And every business, like your issues on sales closure and my issues on sales closure, every business has them. And I think, I don't know, I think over time, you start to learn the business cycle and the sales closure cycle. And the sale, like, what does it take? What are the predictors? What, you know, all that is information, and we're young as companies. So time will start to dictate. I think the most important thing is listen to what you're hearing. You know, start thinking about how do you get, like I always think about, so how do I get, it's not so much, I can get to the right people, I need the right type, right? And it's not like a type is a person, for me, my buyers are people who don't want to do their job the way they did it yesterday. Well, it's not exactly something you see in LinkedIn. It's not exactly a title. You know, how do you define those people? And it's something you have to start working towards defining. It doesn't actually, it's not, I'm looking for it in a book. If you find the answer, let me know. But I don't actually know it, right? And you only know it over time with your business, I think.
Are you saying that all the canned answers that are available from all of the startup gurus are incorrect? There's so many.
Which one do you want to use?
You pick anyone you want.
Don't get Janice started. No, I'm joking. Janice has the real answer. No, that's absolutely true. I do agree with her. And being primarily first as a sales background as well, I mean, I love sales. I do love selling. I think that one of the biggest things, whether I was working for a startup or within my own startup, and when I train my sales team, is that I don't want a sales cycle that's your typical, like, you know, you send out your email to the company, and then you just do a 1-week phone call, and it's all cold. Like, it's all cold for the most part. And a lot of people will rely on that, especially if they don't have a sales background. The company I worked for before my company, when I got in there, my sales were higher, or at least as competitive with the person that was there longest, much senior than me, and had many more territories than me. I can tell you right now, I was not more hardworking than him. I was young, and when I was traveling, I was doing a lot of other things, so I wasn't just working very hard. I'll tell you, it's my startup. I do work harder for myself, but not when it was his. I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, the point is, what I'm trying to get at really quickly is that, you know, if you're going to, you can either work really, really hard, which you should, but you need to also work smart. So when it's yours, you got to do both. And by smart, I mean, instead of just sending an email to, I don't know, some charity, I know it's going to get filtered through the garbage. I know some fund manager is going to get it, and it's never going to get to the person at the top who I need to. I will do my research before. It takes more time, but if it's a really core deal that I know will matter, I'll do my research before I go out and send that email, and I will tailor it based on, we talked about pain point, their pain point. So if I'm talking to a client who has a giving program, I will use their language, not general. It's a lot more work, but it actually gets my calls returned, it gets my emails returned, and you have to be persistent. So I'll say things like, give me 15 minutes of your time, I will make it worth your while, and I'll CC the CEO. Sometimes it can come across as pushy, and there's a balance, you can't be offensive, but I think that sometimes you need to be persistent in order to get it. So I think being a bit more pushy is, in general, what I see with most sales teams is lacking.
We're going to take a question from the middle, but just a quick note for our tech experts over there. We're getting some things on the Twitter feed that says that it's getting more difficult to hear us up on stage. So just FYI on that. In the middle.
Sorry, Aron, if I could just jump in really quickly. We do have a few questions by webcast, particularly for Jason.
Please.
Jason, do you agree that learning transferable skills for software project management is a better route than hiring professionals to get the job done?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Do you agree that learning transferable skills for software project management is a better route than hiring professionals to get the job done?
No. It's cheaper, though. So at the point that I was at, I couldn't hire anybody. So I think it was, it's a solution that was fit the time. Without a doubt, to be perfectly honest, I begged this person from who lives in London, come on to Toronto, it's going to be a great plan. I won't be able to pay you for 3 years, don't worry. But he said no. So no, I think if you can find someone who's been doing it for a long time, who's committed to the project, then I would certainly say hire, because as it is in any great project, getting great talent to do what they do best is the best way to succeed, for sure. But if you only have yourself, then you will experience this as a new entrepreneur. You'll learn to be an expert in every part of your business, which then makes you the right person to run it.
That's interesting idea.
Let me just give you the next question that we have here. How do you work in a space like the medical community that is notoriously risk-averse? How do you frame your products to create buy-in from hospitals and policymakers?
And yet it's funny, we ask our patients to not be risk-averse. So come on in, we'll take that out, no problem. 15-hour surgery. I don't think doctors are risk-averse when it comes to their personal finances. So they're not very risky, not risk takers with money. And then, to be honest, they're not very good with it either. But when it comes to doing things, they are actually usually very, very adventurous. I mean, they're willing to take on a lot of responsibilities, things they're not used to doing. If you know doctors, they tend to be mountain climbers or skydivers or doing crazy stuff. And so they do like risk. They tend to be a group of people that do take on risk. And they do tend to be a group of people that like to take on challenges, and so I don't think that I agree with that entirely. I think the group as a whole are people who really do like risk and like challenge. It's just getting them to do something new is challenging because they've developed habits. I mean, when you're working that hard throughout your life to become a doctor, you study a lot and you develop your skill set that has been successful for you up to now. It got me into med school, it got me this far, why should I change? And it's that which makes it the most difficult field for getting something to become ubiquitous amongst your colleagues. They don't like change. But they'll take a challenge. And you just have to define exactly what it is, the key, and again, the pain point. And I think that's a theme for the night. Is you've got to find that exact thing that they currently are suffering the most from, and then you'll see that the uptake is higher.
Thanks. We'll take one from the middle, please.
Hi, my
Hello.
name is Ravi, and I have a question that's it's kind of geared towards Janice, but can be fielded by the other candidates as well. So I was wondering if you have any thoughts on how can one learn to succeed in the managerial process of an entrepreneurial company?
Oh my God.
Maybe some surefire ideas and stuff like that. Just real quick, a note to Bene, my background isn't in business in any way, it's in engineering, so I'm not really one to have that expertise.
That's a challenging one to answer, because I feel that it's something I'm asking myself all the time, is rising to the role of managing this many people, hiring people I've never hired before. It's one thing to run a department that you've run your whole career and you've trained to run, right? Just like, I think being a doctor or any kind of profession where you've done it, you've grown up in the industry. But in the role now, I'm doing things that I've never done before. I'm managing people, the types of people I've never managed before. I'm hiring people that I've never hired before, right? So it's a constant learn and openness to learning. And, we have, my startup is upstairs, right? We're in the back of a lab with 3 offices running at a space, waiting for the building across the way to open. And I stay in Mars because I have this amazing network of advisors. And, though we're like 12, 15 people, I have another 12, 15 people in an advisory capacity that help me in all different kinds of things. I have a CEO coach. I think there's no one answer to it, but what is just rise to the challenge as the challenge gets to you. Otherwise, it'll kill you probably, but rising to it is probably, but you know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of things that you do on a day-to-day basis that you've never done before. Just because I'm more experienced does not mean, I'm hiring for roles that really I've never hired before. Like, I'm no different than a kid at a school when I'm hiring that role. I just think it's about being willing to learn, take advice from others, work your network, talk to people, and jump in. You know, just jump in and do it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
We'll take another question from the middle.
Hi, my name's Selena, and since we're on this topic of hiring, and also I really liked, Anisa, how you mentioned that you learned a lot by working for an entrepreneur. So I have two questions that are related. One is, if you are someone who's looking to be an entrepreneur, want to learn how to think like an entrepreneur, what should you look for in a startup? And then my second question is, since I'm up here, what do you look for when you hire? To everybody.
Things really quickly, then I'm going to keep it brief because I know we have limited time. One is, for me, what I looked for is a company that was still in the startup space, but not just like brand new, like 2-3 months, but had been large enough that they have sales, they have made errors or have had some form of small bumps or failures, whatever you want to call it, that I could learn from. And they have a very clear product that they're selling. The reason why I didn't want it to be too large or too new, obviously too new I think is intuitive. I wouldn't have maybe learned as much as I needed to learn because I had work experience in general. But too large, I feel like you don't get that startup culture. And what I really wanted to gain from my boss or the atmosphere I was in was, you know, I took a good look at him, and he had been doing a startup for, at the time, 3-4 years. And I took a good look at him and I said, Anisa, he sometimes sleeps at work. This is his life. This is what he does. I'm not saying you should be as extreme as him, but I said, can you do it? Like, part of it was, am I made for this, right? And when he would talk about, you know, things going wrong and hiring and firing and all of that, am I made for that kind of stress? A startup CEO is very different from any other kind of management or CEO. You are everything from the assistant to the sales rep to the sales team to the chief psychologist. Are you made for it? So that's number one, and that's why I chose something around that size. That's not always the rule of thumb. And number two, when I'm hiring or when I'm bringing on interns, two things I look for. My background was in management when I worked in the nonprofit sector. I want people that are self-managing people. I'm not going to babysit you. So if you're going to come in and you're waiting for me to, you know, monitor you, babysit you 9 to 5, it's probably not going to work because I'm going to have you working from home or going to meet clients. I need to give you a certain amount of autonomy, and I need to know you're responsible enough to do that. I don't look for tons and tons and tons of experience, by the way. I look for a personality. Can I train this person? Can I take you from here today and place you in this seat, and can you do it? Because you're a startup worker, so you're going to obviously have to do many different roles, many different hats along the way. That's what I look for. And my interns that have been the best with me of my hires happen to be the ones that didn't have necessarily the most experience, but had the agility to be able to take what I was teaching them, go with it, and obviously they were in many cases smarter than me, so they could do the job better. So that's what I look for.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll take one more question from the middle.
Hi, my name's Mark, and I'd like to address firstly the issue of failure, which we talked about earlier. And prior to starting my company, which is a magazine, a print magazine, and we recently relaunched online, I was fortunate enough to graduate from good university here in Canada, and I was accepted to a private university in the United States, and was hired by broadcasters in the United States and here in Canada as a journalist. Unfortunately, downsizing is a reality that is a part of the modern technology world, and I faced it firsthand. But having gone through the unfortunate experience of downsizing gave me the confidence to launch the publication that I'm now the proprietor of. And I'm wondering how you feel about failure as almost a cathartic part of launching any business.
Mark, that's a great question. So you're thinking about kind of entrepreneurship, not necessarily only by choice, but entrepreneurship because of the situation that you're in.
Correct.
Very cool question.
By necessity.
Yeah, entrepreneurship by necessity.
I would argue it is by necessity all the time.
Yeah. Or at least the best ones, I think. I agree. Yeah.
You know, if,
I'm afraid to touch it.
no, but I am actually, and I said it before, and I will say it again. And I have a great reverence for the people who are able to take a failure and convert it to a success. And I think throughout my experience seeing thousands of medical doctors pass by my eyes and watching some blossom in their careers, I think one of the most definitive qualities in those that did well wasn't that they didn't fail, it was that they took a failure and made it fuel to succeed. And the cognitive state to utilize is one that, I think is one that you could pivot on very quickly. You could be someone who takes a failure and makes it into, I am unable to do things because I failed, or I simply didn't work hard enough and I am going to do better next time. And that's, I think it's a glass half empty, half full kind of concept, but it is definitely, in reality, something that defines people who do succeed and people who do not. And so taking a failure and converting it to a success is, I think, is a key human characteristic of a successful person, period. Across all disciplines.
Janice, do you think that an entrepreneur can be successful if there is an option of failure, if there's a back door, if there's something they have to fall back on?
When I say I'm going to be 1 of 10, it's my positioning on how I want to be. Am I at risk of stepping on a mine as I'm running every day? Yes. Right? So it's more of I feel I have to succeed. Succeed might have, like I said, bumps, which you could define as that F word. However you want to take it, there are a billion things that could kill you on the road.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, no. The answer simply is no. If there's a back door, you're going to always have that cushy space. You're never going to go all out there. If there's a back door, you're not going to succeed. I'll go out there and say that, yeah.
We've got a few minutes left. Thanks for the question, by the way. It was a great question. We've got a few minutes left. So here's a question for you. Do you believe that you can be a successful entrepreneur and have regret?
Of course.
Okay, so what do you regret in your recent journey as an entrepreneur?
Nothing. I knew it. As soon as I said that in my mouth, I was...
You knew you were going to get the follow-up question.
Yeah,
so.
I know.
A life without regret is one that hasn't been lived.
Oh. Yeah, there you go.
So I think regret is part of being an adventurous soul. You take chances.
It's almost, I think, actually what I don't carry things when I run. So I don't carry what happened before. Like, I don't carry negative vibe well. So things that, what do I regret? I'm really happy with what I'm doing. I've had things not work, but I love where I am and what we're doing as a company. So regret that I can't actually pick up and go live in Silicon Valley, whatever. Right. It sort of seems irrelevant. It just seems an unnecessary...
Yeah. There's no time.
There's no time for that nonsense right now. I have to run fast. Yeah. So it seems like just a waste of emotion right now to think about what could have, should have, would have. No time for that. There's only time to deal with what's in front of me, as opposed to, and it's not to say I don't learn from stuff, but there's no time to focus on that some negative energy. I need to be forward. I need to be running.
Yeah, I love it.
I
love most of Janice's answers, by the way. She's really great. She's an inspiration to me up here. What I'd say to that is I saw you back to Jason. You were like, taking it in. I'm the same way. I'd have to say no. I agree with Janice 100%.
We all have baggage, right?
You know what we do? And I don't look at it as regret, though. I got to be honest. You said this, and you've said it, and I'm sure you'd agree. And those of us who are entrepreneurs know this. There is no work-life balance. It's not like you have a work-life balance if you're an entrepreneur, and I believe that many professions is gone. It's blending, work-life blending, right? I can be sitting with my kiddos, my niece and nephew, and I'm sitting with them, and I have to send an email. It just has to be done because when you're an entrepreneur, one day can make and break. That's the difference when you're not an entrepreneur. You're working for one of those big companies. But as an entrepreneur, one day does make or break your survival. And I'm not being dramatic when I say that. I've experienced it at several moments in my career. I don't regret anything that I've done as an entrepreneur. I've grown from it, and I don't feel like I work. That's the difference. I don't know how to explain it. I've worked for so many people, and I loved everyone I worked with. They may have different feelings about me, but I love them all, and I enjoyed it, but I don't feel like I work as an entrepreneur. Like my friends say, come out, just take a break, but I don't know, I love what I do. You do it because you love it. And every time you have that success, all those little bumps or failures along the way, they all get erased. Like she says she doesn't carry anything. I know what she means by that. Because it's just all erased. It's like brand new. You're refreshed, ready to go, ready to conquer the world. And you take all your wounds and you heal. I love what I do. I don't feel like I work because I'm an entrepreneur. And therefore, I don't think that I look at regret the same way. Maybe I could if I was working somewhere else. I don't know.
For our last 2 minutes that we all have together, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to do one as well. Give these great people one tip to take with them when they go. I'm going to give you one that's going to take 10 seconds. Whatever you're working on now, you're probably not doing it fast enough. Go faster.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
That's
say.
mine. So you all have 30 seconds each. I only took 5.
Your network is your net worth. So look at yourself, see where you're spending time, how you're spending it. Your network is your net worth.
Just have no fear and go. Just no fear. Have no fear.
And there's no doubt life is short. Do what you love.
That's good. I like that.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I really think this was a great event. I want to thank everybody for being really active on the Twitter feed. And it was really a very positive feed, so I want to thank everybody for that. Thanks for coming to Mars. I want to thank Jason. I want to thank Janice. I want to thank Anisa for being part of the panel. And that's great. Thanks again for coming. There's going to be a networking event, so hope to see you there.